Indigo, the story gets more and more interesting with each passing day. What is the relationship between the CEO of Indigo and the ex-Prime Minister of Netherlands, who happens to be the chief of NATO now? NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Well, we know that these people are no longer hiding behind some faces. They are out in the open because I can see that some of these people's grip on the world affairs is slipping. Is that what is happening here? We're going to take a really objective look at what played out in the Indigo fracas, and was it deliberately done to try and tarnish? Because this is something that deep state is going to find it difficult to explain away. Why? Because remember, the day Putin landed, in Times of India, 3 ambassadors to India from West Germany, France, and I think Great Britain wrote a letter, and this was basically condemning what Putin is doing. So basically what it means is that the knives are out in the open, they are desperate, they want a war, and they want to somehow provoke Russia into doing that one thing that will justify for NATO that, okay, now we are entering the war. By the way, one update on what is happening in the Russia-Ukraine war. It is believed that Russia bombed a lodge or a hotel where some Ukrainian pilots were staying, and as a matter of fact, there were a couple of French pilots also. All of them got killed. So whatever the smokescreen that NATO may say that we are only morally supporting Ukraine, all falls by the wayside. So this is now becoming open. NATO is embedded with the Ukrainian troop. As to when NATO is going to say, okay, we have taken enough losses, we are going to be pulling out of it, is just a matter of time, in my opinion. Now, let's get back to Indigo. A small slide deck to explain to you what is going on. And I'm not saying that this is something that is Indigo related, but the more you dig, the more interesting things that are coming out, and that will convince you that there is a lot of hanky-panky going on, including, I'm going to touch upon who is believed to be the main investors in Indigo. I've got some leads on that. I'm going to give you that also at the end of this video. Please watch it till the end, and if you have not already subscribed to our channel, do subscribe to our channel. First, like this video. Here we go. Who was Parshurama, who led a life of devotion, dedication, and daring? Why did he take birth on the earth? Was it to eradicate corrupt Kshatriya rulers who had become tyrannical and oppressive, or was it to bestow daya for the needy? Chaos, clues, conspiracy, the Indigo shutdown. Why just that day? And it wasn't like this is something that it came suddenly, the ruling from the government. The government had issued the rules 18 months ago. So what is going on? Starting December 1st, over 2,100 flights were cancelled, Indigo's worst operational collapse in decades. By the way, personal experience about Indigo, I love to hate this airline and I hate to love this airline. The reason is there's one thing that is likable about this airline, and that is they are usually on time, usually, okay? Everything else leaves a lot to be desired. The food they serve, I mean, sometimes you buy this ticket for flexibility and that ticket comes free with food. You have this dilemma, I've paid for this food, should I want to ignore it or eat it? I ate it once and I felt sick. For 24 hours I was completely out. So I made a decision, no more eating the food regardless of which kind of ticket I am buying and flying. Those of you who are frequent flyers of Indigo will understand what I mean by that. Then the second thing is they catch you even with 1 kilo of excess baggage. Man, they fleece you with sermons saying that you should have done this instead, you should have done this instead, then the price would have gone down. Look, people are flying Indigo because they are usually on time. Plus, they have a vice-like grip in the airline network in India. And this is the only reason why people fly Indigo. In fact, if you look at them, they most of the time park their planes on the tarmac. There'll be a bus that will come to the gate, pick you up from there, go, and then you have to walk up there. It's very difficult for older people. Instead, they will not use the aero bridges. Why, I wonder? They should explain why they are not using aero bridges. Well, one immediate thought that comes to my mind is that it is more expensive perhaps to use the aero bridge, so cut costs. Anyway, so these are all just some of the things that I personally don't like about Indigo, and I would like them to improve their customer service, including at the desk. They need to be much more proactive and have a more helpful attitude. I have seen Air India do extra miles to help us out. Okay, Air India is something else in terms of tech support, customer support at the gate. They do a much better job. And again, hospitality inside the plane is okay, both are okay, but Air India usually is much more responsive to requests, especially of the unusual kind. So let's leave it at that. Let's go to what happened. The reason these 2,100 flights were grounded is cited to be because of crew fatigue, pilot shortages, and roster mismanagement. You can accept it to some extent, but why that particular day? That's the question that they're finding it hard to answer. Why did the crisis peak just when President Vladimir Putin came visiting? Was there a political timing? Well, see, I'll show you the data. I mean, you guys can respond by way of comments what you think about this video. And I'm going to present you with compelling data which points to something beyond what meets the eye, especially the ownership of this airline. I'll come to that in the end. Let's just take a look at what else happened. Other airlines such as Air India, Vistara, Akasa, SpiceJet remained largely unaffected. These are good airlines. I've flown some of them, but they don't fly at the time I need to be at the destination. This is one of the challenges, including Air India. They are good, but they fly at their timing, whatever reason for that. And usually, if somebody is flying on business, simple secret, okay? People like to leave first thing in the morning from wherever they live and land early on in the morning at the destination, try and get their work done, maybe 1 day, 2 days, and then return back on the evening by the last possible flight to where they came from. This is a typical businessman approach. Thankfully, with metros and better traffic management, this is actually possible in India. You can go and meet 5-6 people over a period of 6 to 10 hours and actually get a lot of work done. It used to be not possible before, but now, thanks to the infrastructure developments, these are all possible. So this is what all the airlines should look at. Are we giving the right kind of timing for departures and arrivals? So that's something that other airlines can work on, because right now Indigo has that part down really well. Okay, now an open letter has gone viral making explosive allegations. This is supposed to be written by somebody who's a long-term Indigo insider, and it accuses CEO Pieter Elbers, you see his picture there, and top management of systemic management and employee abuse. The letter alleges that pilots were humiliated for flagging fatigue, safety warnings were ignored, and unqualified executives were promoted, leading to a staffing crisis through overwork. The letter goes on to claim that the collapse was years in the making due to arrogance and profit obsession. Now you go back and connect the dots to what I said about aero bridge and making people to take the bus and walk on the tarmac and get into the plane parked on the tarmac. You will start seeing this drive to be efficient, to save costs. I don't blame them for that, and I'll come to you on some of the other things that the government can do. But what government does will help all the airlines, not just Indigo. That's also another thing that we can look at. 8 top executives were named, including operations head. None have responded publicly. The regulatory flashpoint, what started it all? The DGCA show cause notice. The crisis erupted when the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, enforced stricter flight duty time limitation, FDTL norms, pilot rest rules. The rule was that pilots need to be given a 48-hour off time, rest and recover, then they can go back into the roster, 48 hours. Now, what has happened is, I'll tell you in a minute. While competitors such as Air India, Vistara, Akasa hired pilots in anticipation over the last 18 months, because all airlines were given 18 months to follow the new guidelines. Indigo deliberately ignored the requirement. Why haven't they explained why they deliberately ignored it so far? The only thing that I've heard is that good talent is difficult to find. But if the other airlines are able to hire, what is your problem? You are, after all, the most popular. According to one calculation, you own 65% of the market in India. And that itself is bad. The DGCA has issued a show cause notice to Elbers for significant lapses in planning, demanding an explanation for the operational collapse. Now, the government's position and reaction. Once the chaos happened, the Civil Aviation Ministry intervened to contain chaos and rolled back the FDTA norms temporarily to stabilize flight schedules. You know what they rolled back? From 48 hours downtime, they said it is okay if they have a downtime of 36 hours. 36 hours. That means a day and a half. Critics allege that this rollback damaged the government's reform image. Look, the government is in a hard place at this point, between a rock and a hard place. Why? Because if they try to, whip the thing, Indigo could still further go into shutdown mode. Right now, they own 65% of the market. What would you do if you were the government? You would have to use the candy and the cane alternately, and I think that's what the government is doing. I think this is the right thing to do. It's not easy to manage a country of size of India, especially when now with middle class preferring to travel by air because of the convenience and the affordability. The other thing that the government has done is they have set a cap for ticketing prices based on the distance of flight, which I think is very reasonable. And again, those prices will find their logical bottom once things settle down. The PMO has reportedly instructed officials to review Indigo's compliance history and the accountability of Director General of Civil Aviation Staff overseeing pilot rostering. By the way, while the government is at it, you should start looking at the staff who man the DGCA desks. It is told that many a IAS officer who has not been able to rise up the ranks in the normal ladder have been posted in DGCA, sort of like, think of it like, punishment posting or whatever. And these people are not, I'm not going to stereotype everyone, but that is the allegation that I'm hearing from people in the know. So please, government needs to look into that. Are there DGCA officials who look the other way? And if so, you have to take action on them. Not just transferring bullshit. That's not what I want. I want people to be named and shamed and put on suspension. If they have over 50 years of age, there is a rule, right? You can withdraw pensions. Start doing that. I mean, people were stranded for hours on end. And the airports, even though some of them are big, they are not equipped to handle people hanging on for hours on end. So what did Indigo do? What was the Indigo's crime? I mean, crime meaning like, what mistake they did, or what was the mischief they did? Let's put it that way. This is the question that leads to sabotage and political timing. Indigo ignored the FDTL reforms for 18 months, unlike other airlines that hired the extra pilot. So DGCA issues these guidelines 18 months ago. What was the follow-up measure? Did they call the Indigo officials to say, how many people have you hired more? Was there any follow-up done? See, Congress makes a very, loose statement saying that, Indigo bought a lot of electoral bonds and therefore BJP is looking the other way. But when UPA was in power, the same thing happened. The maximum contributions were to the UPA. So how do you explain that? So see, look, there is a cost of doing business. It doesn't matter which company you are, you have to, kind of give more money to the party in power. That is something that is there. How else will they be able to give 10,000 rupees per voter, right? So this is a circular logic. I'm not trying to say what BJP is doing is right or wrong. They are at least trying to do the right thing. Why did the DGCA not monitor? 18 months. They knew that Indigo was increasing the number of flights, at the same time not increasing the number of pilots. So as Indigo started adding new routes, setting up a predictable collapse, that happened once the rules were enforced. When were the rules enforced? I think it around December 1st. See, that was an 18-month period that was fixed before. So suddenly the rules started getting enforced. And suddenly Indigo continued to sell tickets, okay, even though they knew they were going to shut down all these flights. And they knew that cancellations were imminent. Yet they continued to sell. Oh, by the way, another thing, another beef. Good luck trying to get back money from Indigo for a ticket that you did not use, or for any kind of reimbursement. Nothing will come to you. Their customer support is one of the worst. Online, they can solve these problems. They don't do that. They prefer to have somebody speak to you. It is just a round and round and round and round exercise. You get tired at the end of it and say, God damn it, let it go. 3,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees. I give it to the airline, let them keep it. That's what happens. I mean, I'm telling you, not one thing can change once the ticket is booked. You do that and you are in for a lot of grief. This is with Indigo. I'm not saying the others are better, but I can tell you Air India has treated me much better. I have to say these things. These are personal experiences. I'm a frequent flyer. I jet all over India when I'm in India. So I have to tell you, these are some of the personal experiences I'm saying. Those of you who feel that I'm saying something wrong, please feel free to correct me, but this is my personal experience. That's why I'm saying that. And this is now, I've been flying Indigo for several years now. International code share flights with Turkish Airlines, that never got stopped. So while all this turmoil was happening inside domestic flights, the international flights that Indigo has in connection with Turkish Airlines, because what happens is you can, I believe, fly to even United States doing this hop. You go from Indian source, go to, I guess, Istanbul or someplace in Turkey, and then connect a Turkish airline flight from there to the destinations. And I'm also told they're quite cheap and a lot of Indians use that. Nothing wrong in that. If you do the proper thing, if you offer proper service. Personally, I would not travel Turkish Airlines, but that's just my personal choice. Okay. Now, why do doubts of sabotage and political timing arise? The alleged objective, it is believed, was to create domestic chaos and embarrass the Modi government during Putin's high-profile visit, with some social media voices even calling it a foreign-linked corporate conspiracy. What gives ground for this is what has happened in the past. For example, there is Air France, this is the French airline, and there is KLM, that is the Dutch airline. And these two merged sometime a few years ago. I don't remember the exact time. These two merged. Now, when they merged, Pieter Elbers, he was the KLM CEO at that time. Then he became the chairman of the joint airline, that is KLM plus Air France combined. We'll talk about what happened there also, and we'll give you an idea of how the Dutch, the Netherlands country or people related to Netherlands have managed to keep a grip on this. I don't know why the French government allowed it. I'm not going to go into all that. But what happened was this. There was a big clash or there were many clashes that Pieter Elbers had with the Air France KLM CEO Ben Smith over KLM's autonomy. So what happens is the merger happens, and I think at the time of the merger, France had more stake into the merged company, and then something else played out. I'll talk to you about that. But the combined company entity CEO, his name was Ben Smith. Tensions began soon after Smith arrived in 2018 as he pushed to streamline the group and revive the struggling Air France division. Now, what happened is Elbers, he was backed by the KLM staff and the Dutch government, fought to preserve KLM's autonomy guaranteed under the 2004 merger structure. So the merger happened in 2004. The Dutch government bought a 14% stake in Air Force KLM to match the French state stake and assert equal influence. That means to start with, France had more, and then the Dutch ramped up their investment. Then the Dutch government under Mark Rutte, Rutte, this guy is the chief of NATO now. See, that's where the suspicions come. NATO is pretty desperate. NATO doesn't know what to do because US is threatening to pull out of NATO, and if it pulls out of NATO, all the money, the gravy, everything will stop. NATO's budget will collapse. Nobody will pay. So this is where the problem comes. Elbers was very, very close to this fellow, Mark Rutte. What happened in 2019, you have to go back and look at that. He intervened, Mark Rutte, to protect Elbers and national interests against French integration. So 15 years, these guys have been having an on-again, off-again fight. And Pieter Elbers was a highly popular CEO of KLM from 2014 to 2022. Elbers was a fierce defender of the Dutch company's independence. I mean, see, when two major international airlines merge, right, one of the things that's logical is you have your flights, we have our flights. and those will continue. But what about that one place where both merge? Supposing these are Venn diagrams, right? Two circles, but the two circles will have some common point. For example, flights from maybe to and from United States, or to and from Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Beijing, New Delhi, what have you. There will be places of overlap. Those places is where most of the things used to be a problem, and it is still an uneasy alliance. The company is single, but people keep grumbling that things are not going well for that airline. By the way, with now Mark Rutte being the NATO Secretary General, he has been one since October 2024. Some draw links between Elbers' Dutch NATO associations and alleged anti-India maneuvering. It's entirely possible. See, while all this was happening, Pieter Elbers was vacationing in Holland. I mean, this is Indigo is 90% of their flights are inside India. That means 90% of their revenues come from there. I'm yet to hear any proper statements from the CEO. Maybe they did. I have not been keeping up with the last couple of days. But the point that comes up is, if there is so much of a problem, why did the CEO not weigh in? The least he could have done was to fly back in and try and make an appearance to try and assuage the hurt feelings of the passengers, right? So this is where things stand. I expect the government to crack the whip, and let's find out how much that is effective. But for sure, one of the things that needs to happen is we need to have more private airlines in India, and that they need to give stiff competition to Indigo. And there are many things that the government has done, but they need to also look at what is the air fuel. It's called aviation kerosene, if I remember correctly. Those costs, the taxes on that are very high. And so what happens is, any airline that has tried to do domestic operations, at some point they start running into heavy wind. There's a very delicate balance as to when you can be profitable as an airline in India. Go Air, SpiceJet, I don't know, the Air Deccan and so many other airlines, they've all suffered, and they withdrew Kingfisher Airlines, because at some point of time you have to give up. The planes make money for the company only if they are flying, which means they have to have a vast network in place, that they have flights that they land and they take off within 20 to 25 minutes. That means they need to unload the passengers, load the new set, get on the runway and be off. That is how you make money. And Indigo seems to have found the knack of doing that. At the same time, they cut a lot of corners. Be that as it may, people are willing to put up with all that because of their timely arrival, mostly punctual airline. That's what is their mantra. If any other company, if any other airline can do it, well, more power to them. Air India and Indian Airlines are a single entity now, but Indian Airlines used to have a fairly large fleet of flights. I don't know if Air India is continuing all those things. I think it's called Air India Express. I could be wrong. I don't see any Indian Airlines logos anymore. So the combined unit is called Air India. Also, I'm hearing that the government is having a public-private partnership of a new airline called Bharat Airline. Good idea, but remember the costs that are being there: landing costs, fueling costs, air bridge costs, all these things. You need to give some sort of discount for the new airline so that they can get their breath, they can find out a way that they can be profitable, and then things will become very interesting. I still haven't told you about the ownership structure of Indigo. Please wait for a few more minutes and I'll tell you that. But if you look at the pattern of disruptions that are happening during diplomatic visits, there is this is undebatable. This is not for debate. This is right there in front of our eyes. February 24th, 25th, 2020, Donald Trump's visit, Delhi riots happened, 53 dead. April 2025, JD Vance visit, Pahalgam terror attack, 26 killed. November 2025, Netanyahu visit, Delhi car bomb blast, 15 dead. Geez, many of you probably didn't know that, didn't connect the dots that Bibi Netanyahu was in Delhi at that point of time. December 2025, Putin visit, Indigo crisis, 2,100 plus flights cancelled. See, each incident has overshadowed diplomatic engagements and fueled coincidence or sabotage speculation. Now, these are the questions that Indigo needs to answer, and also to some extent the government also has to answer. The meltdown was deliberately timed to coincide with Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to embarrass Modi government and the Indian aviation sector on the global stage. Because see, the thing is, the irony is, even some of the so-called friendly Indian government channels, those are, I mean, they are friendly. I mean, let's not put any other way. Even they, I believe, were covering the Indigo crisis. See, this strikes home. Many of the executives in all these companies, media networks, they're all flying all the time. So when this happens and a key guy is supposed to go somewhere and he can't go there because an Indigo flight is down and you are going to miss a big story, people get pissed. So that has become like the front and center, and unfortunately an important visit of an important dignitary got sidelined, and Indigo became front and center. By refusing to hire pilots and allowing mass cancellations, the airline allegedly aimed to create public furor and force the government to roll back safety policies. While domestic operations collapsed, international codeshare flights ran smoothly, suggesting a targeted disruption of India's internal infrastructure. Now, what are the things that the government can do? The sender has only bent temporarily to resolve the immediate passenger crisis, but is preparing a massive crackdown. It is an expected multi-agency investigation into Indigo's operational practices. Parliament may introduce a passenger safety and rights bill, codifying fatigue rules into law. Possible review of foreign leadership roles in strategic aviation entities. By the way, I think since Tata has taken over Air India, the CEO also is of foreign origin there. I'm not saying anything, guys. I'm just telling you the facts. Broader aviation reform roadmap to reduce the near duopoly of Indigo and Air India, potentially opening the market to new entrants. I would also add to this investigation into the DGCA staff, the people who are responsible to make sure that airlines complied within that 18-month window. What the heck were they doing? That is something that needs to be also addressed. Also, now the most important point. People are beginning to, and I have been hinting this for the last few days, they are beginning to say that the ownership structure, who really owns this airline, needs to be probed. There will be shell companies, there will be shadow entities, there will be benamis, there will be this, there will be that, but the fingers are pointing towards a certain family of Italian origin that lives in India. Not only that, fingers are also pointing to some Turkish connections in owning Indigo. And this is something that the Indian government can lay it out in black and white. And this is what the Indian government needs to be doing. Why don't you publish a white paper? Who owns this? You can do it because you have software like, what is that, Palantir software, which can, look through the walls, and it can also see around the corners and edges to tell you who exactly is the final entity or the final beneficiary. A lot of truths will start coming out. I've heard these murmurings a long time ago, but whenever I brought it up, I was shouted down, and I said, okay, fine, maybe there is more evidence that needs to be brought out. This came across my desk 7-8 years ago, that a member of the, you know who I'm talking about, actually has a considerable stake in Indigo, 2016 or 17, something like that. Anyway, even when I present black and white evidence of crime, what has happened? In NDTV, Pranay Roy and Radhika Roy, they're just going scot-free, laughing their way to the bank. That is the status right now. Indian government tries, but is not unable to do the final nail on the coffin and put them away for life. That's what happens, unfortunately. Let's hope that my prediction that nothing is going to happen in the National Herald case goes wrong, and that people are indeed sent to jail, because that is a criminal offense. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.